Welcome back to the weekly portfolio update videos. Currently, the stock portfolio sit at a combined value of over 47,000 AUD. That's made up of the 19,294 USD in my stake portfolio, which is just over 29,000 AUD, and then the 17,835 AUD in my Vanguard portfolio. Currently, the markets have been trading up, and my US portfolio is up 10%, which is around $1,752, and is up $144 today. This has bounced back, as the portfolio in the last video was only up 6%. My AUD portfolio has also bounced back up, and I've put extra money into it, so it's now up to 17,835, and I made the addition of putting extra funds into VLC, which is Vanguard's Australian Large Company Index, but more on that later. A quick overview through the US portfolio. Not much has changed except for my initial investments, which I did last week, into the likes of Apple, Costco, McDonald's, and VOO. I have a little bit of buying power, which was a dividend from JP Morgan, and my overall position in this has been in the green now as well, after I was considering selling out around the 150s. I will potentially be selling out of my Amazon position and maybe my Google position in the future, but more on that to come. Overall, I wanted to show a quick 1 week performance of the overall market, just to showcase how good everything has been going. It's hard to find anything in the red, and if you look at the major positions, such as Microsoft up 7%, Apple 5, Google 5, Nvidia 11, even stocks like Berkshire Hathaway are up 6%. Overall, it's been a great week for investors, as the markets have traded back, and there is a reason for that. This article goes through a lot of it, as Wall Street records best week in a year after US job growth slows. US stocks have registered their best week in a year, with a slowdown in hirings reported on Friday, fueling investors' expectations that interest rates have peaked. American employers created 150,000 new jobs last month, fewer than the forecast and barely half of September's figures. The number provided further power to rallying stocks as well as the US Treasuries, as investors bet that the slowdown in the labor market made it more likely that the Federal Reserve will not raise rates further in the coming month. The blue chip S&P stock index closed 0.9% up on the day and 5.9% since last Friday, for its best week since early November 2022. The yield on the 2-year US Treasury note, which moves inversely to the price and tracks rate expectations, dropped to 2-month low of 4.81% following the jobs data. Yields on 10-year notes dipped below 4.5% for the first time in months. The bond market had previously strengthened this week on the back of comments by the Fed, Jay Powell, that the central bank was proceeding carefully with future rate rises. Overall, with the job growth slowing down and investors being a bit more bullish on the market, stocks have rallied back. And there's no other way of seeing this other than, like they said, looking at the S&P. The S&P is up 5%, and I'm invested into VOO. It's my biggest position by far, sitting at 9,300 USD. My goal is to get this to 10,000 hopefully before the end of the year, as I slowly invest more and more into it, and it takes up 50% of my US portfolio. I'm back in the green now at 2.2%, but I've been in the green a lot more, but I was buying in the 400s. So as it traded down, I tried to get in, but I did make some investments, and I'm just trying to dollar cost average my price down whilst I can. It's now back in the green, but that's not going to stop me from investing, as I currently have 23 shares in the stock. Going through the rest of my portfolio, my recent addition of McDonald's has been a very good one, as it has traded back up and is now up over 4.6% on my 2.8 shares. My average share price of $256 compared to the $267 now means I'm up around $33. The stock is still down over the last 3 months and is still down a lot over the last year as well. But I don't see any weaknesses in the business, as they've recently done their earnings and it was strong. Whenever I go into one, it's full of people, whether that's in my country or outside, and I think it's a great company and staple to have in my portfolio for the long run. Like I touched on, banking stocks have been a topic of the discussion amongst stock investors and people all around, as people are shorting regional small banks and they've been destroyed in the market, where bigger banks like JP Morgan are almost labeled too big to fail. The banks had a really strong time. I know when it was around 156, I was looking at it and I was up around 10%. I'm currently up just 1.63% as it has traded down over the last 3 months, 8.37%. But my goal with this position was just to diversify a bit away from tech, get a strong dividend, and hopefully balance out my portfolio. Speaking of dividends, I did get a recent dividend from JP Morgan for the $8.74, which might sound small, but every little dividend counts, and hopefully those money can grow, and my next dividend can be in the $10 as the position continues to get bigger. Looking through my Vanguard portfolio, it is now getting closer and closer to that $20,000 mark, which was the goal before the end of the year. I did invest my dividends, which I got, which was around $240, into VLC, plus the additional funds I deposited, and that position's now sitting at $10,870. That's made of the top 20 biggest companies in Australia, such as the big banks, the mining giants, and some of the food giants such as Woolworths and Coles. Honestly, going through the portfolio, not much has changed. VHY is still the position I'm a bit iffy on, whether I will sell out of it and just put those extra funds into the likes of VGS, which is my international share index, which holds the likes of Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon, as I diversify a little bit away from the Australian positions as well. The main goal for this portfolio is just to get steady, strong growth and get the dividend franking credits. Where in comparison, my stake portfolio is all about capital growth and a longer term outlook. If I was to sell any positions, if I needed cash for something towards like a house down payment, I would sell out of my Vanguard position and keep my stake position open for now. Overall, the goal for the end of the year is still to get the portfolios to around about 55,000. Obviously, that would be heavily indicated and helped if the market does rally up and I can get back up to that 14-15% that I was up earlier in the year. But as I continue to put a bit of money away each week, I will hopefully edge closer and closer to that goal. Looking at the portfolios, you can see the balance is still fairly similar. VOO is still a position I need to get to 50%, so I do need to grow that 2%, which is going to take out of my other positions. So likely when I sell out of Amazon, I'll allocate those funds into VOO. My other positions do still make up just over 50%, and when looking at my Australian portfolio, it's still weighted how I like it, with 60% being in VLC and the remainder being diversified across those other two ETFs. It's been a strong few months and a strong year for me in terms of my investing, as all my positions have slowly been going up, thankfully to me doing those extra deposits each month. I've also started to track my dividends, and I've graphed them, so I'll show you here. You can see each month I've tracked my dividends from when I got my first dividends at stake compared to when I got my first dividends through Vanguard, and I'm going to total them up, but you can see the history and the slow growth as they've come in, especially in my stake account. My Vanguard dividends are obviously going to be a lot higher because they pay a higher dividend, those ETFs, but it's nice to track these and see the steady strong growth of all the money that I'm reinvesting. Overall, this was just another quick update as stocks have rallied and the market is doing great. In terms of my goal for the upcoming week or 2 weeks, next pay I will be putting extra funds in and hopefully getting this portfolio closer to 20,000. Across the next month, I also want to get my Vanguard position to over $18,000 as well. So that's the goals, and I'll continue to dollar cost average into companies that I believe in for the long term, and then hopefully I can use these portfolios to gain wealth and go towards something like my first house deposit. That was all for this video, and just a quick update on how things were looking. Cheers.